So, that's that. It's over for Mick Schumacher with Cadillac. But the real question is how it ended. Because it looks like Cadillac didn't reject him. Mick rejected Cadillac. And if you're a Mick Schumacher naysayer and you're just thinking, I'm just on the stuff, well, yeah, I'm way ahead of you. I need some more. Yes, according to multiple sources, it was the German who turned down the automotive giant. That's all well and good in terms of integrity, but why would he do such a thing? And for some of you out there, why should I even care? Well, may I remind you? It's still a very interesting point of discussion, and clearly there is some interest about what happens with Mick Schumacher, so here, I got you guys. I don't want to just be, oh, well, that's that then, because there seems to be more to this, that Bottas and Perez might have had a good wingman, but it turned out not to be, and I really want to find out why, and what it could mean for the options for the German driver going forward. And maybe a certain Zach Brown might come and knock in and say, hey, I hear you're the quali guy. You the quali guy? I hope Mick Schumacher's got a strong back. But we did know for sure that the role that Mick was going to get was not one of the two main drivers, but a reserve role with benefits. The races report is not a simple clear-cut, oh, Mick was not good enough. Turns out, as per the reporting, the incoming team did have a contract ready for the young man as the team's reserve driver and the definite successor to Jenson Button, who announced a while ago he was to retire from full-time racing at the end of the year. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with World Endurance, Cadillac's Jota partnership is actually a really fruitful one. You look to where they are in the Constructors Cadillac, they are second place. This is not some podunk outfit with the Cadillac badge on it. They are far better than Alpine are right now. They can be contesting for podiums regularly and even the win. They would still certainly be a nice little uptick for Schumacher away from the Alpine times, but it seems like there might have been a bit of a catch in terms of the team's ethos in comparison to Alpine, who are desperate for somebody to get them into hyperpole. And let's not forget, World Endurance, it's really all about co-op and a team sport. Mick's partners, Gunon and Mako, they really lean heavily on the German being able to do well in qualifying, so that means those two can really work on race pace. Because as the old saying goes, a high tide raises all ships. Everybody benefits from doing well in qualifying. In fact, it could have been a very huge deal. More money was supposedly on the table for Schumacher. And contrary to many folks who wish to only concentrate on 2022 in regards to the driver, it was he who snubbed what Torres and Andretti laid out for him to be the successor to Jenson. Why? Well, the race reports that while the salary was higher than his Alpine deal would be, the Cadillac side would have come with stricter one-size-fits-all conditions. Because as I just said, over at Alpine, Mick is undoubtedly the big fish there. He is pretty much the guy who is carrying the number 36 car. Oftentimes, whenever you look at the timing sheets, Mick is usually not only the fastest Alpine driver, but in some cases, the fastest driver out there over the course of an ultimate lap. Sometimes in the case of a good few tenths to half a second. That can be really valuable over the course of a few hours. It's quite evident that Mick has a talent for sports cars, something that his father Michael had back in the day before Formula 1 came a-knocking. And I certainly think that if Mick were to leave Alpine to go somewhere else, and thankfully for Alpine it wasn't Cadillac, Bruno Faman will be really nervous right now, because Alpine, it's really not a good look right now. Not only in World Endurance, because they're not exactly setting the world alight there. They're doing okay. But then also in Formula 1, oh dear. Oh dearie me. And no, it's not nepotism. He's in his second season now with Alpine. He's actually able to show a lot of credentials in terms of qualifying. And okay, may I remind you, don't worry, I'm still on the stuff, don't worry. Okay, I think I can continue now. Conversely, taking Cadillac's deal likely would have meant trading that freedom he has with Alpine for a more rigid structure. And this isn't something against Mick or anything, because even though Jenson is an F1 champion, with additional silverware in GT racing back in Japan, as well as other series, even he's had to play ball with the terms that Cadillac granted him. And realistically, in terms of the situation where Mick finds himself in that moment, maybe the priorities that Cadillac would have afforded him aren't really, in line or in step with what his goals are. He wants to get back, Mick has said many times, into F1 right now, or at least as soon as possible. And that is the gamble that he might have had to take, because sure, even though he would have ultimately ended up being the reserve, Cadillac is still a brand new operation, and with the selection of Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez, the team has banked on incredible experience to be leading the charge, not putting the responsibility on a rookie or somebody with just a couple of seasons to their name. That is not again a slight against Mick Schumacher at all. It might actually be a blessing in disguise, because say for example, Cadillac actually turn out to be near the back. The people who have been against him from the very beginning since 2022 would be just saying, blame Mick. It's Mick's fault, no one else's. You know that would happen if Cadillac were really locked down to the bottom. And if it turns out that Mick remains with Alpine, sure, it has plenty of flaws. He does have immediate visibility, and the people within World Endurance immediately are aware of what Mick can do. But there is a part of me that really thinks he should have taken the deal. But hey, I'm not Mick Schumacher. I'm a guy who is hocking the number 47 variety. Sure, it might have just been an evolved version or a more synergized version of what happened last year, where he was sharing testing duties with Mercedes and racing for Alpine in sports cars, but he would have been able to demonstrate valuable graft for all concerned, maybe even prove doubters wrong. The selection of Checo and Bottas for the two main seats is a sound one in terms of building up experience for a completely brand new team. The last time we got that was with Haas nigh on a decade ago. No inherited bits here either, except for a 2023 Ferrari for testing prior to next year's debut. But from what we could gather, Mick's new management squad were pitching him as the ultimate blue-collar grafter. A man who was, sure, not able to make a dent in the F1 universe with Gunther Steiner and Haas, for many reasons I have covered on the channel multiple times, but we've also been able to see what he can do under the watch of Toto Wolff, him being one of his main backers, but not quite having enough conviction to pull the trigger and giving Mick Schumacher the seat to replace Lewis Hamilton, and instead raising up Kimi Antonelli, who is really suffering trials and tribulations at the moment, incredibly unfairly so from the Italian press, and all of the pundits are now starting to dogpile on him again, and maybe suggesting once more that, oh, maybe Toto didn't make the right pick, maybe Kimi wasn't ready for Formula One, if at all, which is incredibly unfair. Remember, 64 points in a debut year. That's still not too shabby. That's certainly more than enough to justify him being around for at least a good few years at the moment. And I seriously reckon that having a rear gunner as Mick to go alongside Bottas, who this year is the rear gunner for Mercedes, would have easily been a coup. That would have been a really huge major influence, because I still believe that Mick was a really big contributing positive factor, a guiding light, a beacon of hope in 2023 and 2024. And also history shows that paths back into F1 after a while away can still bear fruit. Let's not forget Nico Hülkenberg's 2020 Super Sub. He came back in 2023 to provide Haas some hope. And then, of course, the endeavours of Esteban Ocon being a reserve driver for a bit and then coming back with Renault. Mick could have positioned himself in a similar lineage, just waiting out the clock, then getting his opportunity right from the get-go. But then you might be arguing, well, that should have happened at Mercedes, but it didn't. That is a very fair point. And I appreciate that he's not simply taking the check at the cost of being able to fully realise his potential, which Alpine provide him and gladly profit from, but I don't see any other team taking him on to get a second chance. The only two doors I see really are Alpine, if Colapinto chooses to walk after frustrations at Zandvoort, or Mercedes if Toto panicked and demoted Antonelli, which, let's be honest, will not happen, nor should it happen. But you see what I mean, right? I don't really think there are going to be any vacancies within Formula 1 anytime soon that can't be filled with maybe a protege within Formula 2, or maybe someone else up and down the current Formula 1 grid. The only way that I think Alpine would even take him, if Colapinto chooses to remain, is if Pierre Gasly were to walk out of sheer frustration, which again is a very big unlikelihood. But that's for another video, so do keep watching and liking and subscribing and hyping and all the stuff you have to do on YouTube these days. And the context around Cadillac's F1 project matters too, because this is not some kind of half-hearted endeavour in just making the most out of Formula 1 being a cash cow at the moment. No, Cadillac are really, really going in hard with their marketing glitzy debut, getting Keanu Reeves to make a docuseries about them, a warts and all display about their establishment and getting ready for Formula 1. They are going to be making it very clear to all of the doubters, the people who are carrying their phones around as if they're having to matter for their dear life, that they are the business, that they are legit. This is big, but despite that, it does seem like for the time being, for at least the next couple of years, the roll from reserve to race seat would be a very, very narrow margin. It would take either Checo or Valtteri after maybe even just a year to just go, ugh, I don't like this, there's no hope for me, I'm out, and then they might go off into definite retirement. But right now, I don't see their appetite disappearing anytime soon. They've got too much to prove at the moment, even though Checo says he has nothing to prove. But in a way, I think he really does. Mainly aimed at a certain Austrian doctor. And also, just going for the reserve role would just badge Mick Schumacher as just a development driver. Someone like an Anthony Davidson or a Pedro de la Rosa, who, after 2002, never got a full-time seat again, save for a little bit of a stint from the middle of the 2000s for McLaren, which he actually still holds to this day, the lap record around Bahrain. And with Mick rejecting the deal, supposedly, he might have not really seen many upsides with the Cadillac reserve role, and many, potentially, WEC downsides. Well, I mean, at least for next year, but perception matters too, you know? Because, hey, if he took the role of the reserve driver, then great, people would still see Mick Schumacher every now and again up and down the garage, but mainstream Formula One fans who may not be watching sports cars will not be made privy to what he's being able to do potentially with Jota, him replacing Jenson Button. He might actually be a tour de force if he actually decided to take on the role as an equal, but again, that's all speculation and doubt and what have you. There is clearly a reason why Mick turned down the deal, which could have easily been the more logical way of getting back into the sport with a brand new team. So just pausing on the Mick train for the moment, who could be Cadillac's reserve driver then? Well, there are plenty of options. Felipe Drugovich has been knocked around every now and again. He's also potentially attached to maybe replacing Jenson Button at Jota, because he is dabbling around in, I think, ELMS or something. And then there's always Zhou Guanyu, maybe a little bit of a cheeky punt with Rafael Camara. For Zhou Guanyu, there's a little bit of a presence to the Asian market from the Chinese side of things. And then Rafael Camara, well, he's the F3 champion, he's attached to Ferrari, and I do think that he has a future with the Scuderia or a Ferrari-backed team, at least for the next couple of years, because let's not forget, Ferrari will be looking for a B-team model that's a little bit more sustainable. Since Sauber is transforming into Audi, they'll be doing their own thing. They'll be saying bye-bye to that long-term partnership. That goes back decades, that one between Sauber and Ferrari. Almost as far as Michael Schumacher himself testing out a Sauber just to do them a solid as part of their partnership. Haas, who have been attached to Ferrari for a while, have taken on the mantle, are getting into bed with Toyota that little bit more, really flirting the idea of doing stuff at the Fuji Speedway now they can do testing. I think I saw a recent promotional thing that you can go and watch Kamui Kobayashi at the Fuji Speedway testing a Haas 2023 car. So they're really selling that, and who knows whether or not Toyota might start to evolve that partnership even more. So until 2029, when the changes of the rules will happen and General Motors has its own power unit for then, which could be a V8, Ferrari's going to want a really solid partner. So that's where I potentially think it will go. It's going to be a Ferrari reserve driver or a development or academy driver. Now I understand that Mick fans will be crushed by this news. I am too. I wanted an opportunity for him within the confines of F1 for him to correct interpretations regarding his skills. Interpretations which WEC have demonstrated admirably, but are not at the top of many casual fans' minds. That being said, a reserve driver's role for Cadillac wouldn't be as optimal like it would be for other teams, because of the fact that team is running a Ferrari as their test car for probably the next couple of years. And that will not be afforded to Cadillac, their own homegrown variety, until 2028. So, for the time being, if Mick Schumacher's role is going to be as their reserve and test driver, who will be doing most of his mileage doing those kinds of things, TPC testing, then, you know, it wouldn't be a really good referential baseline as to an actual Cadillac car. He won't get to really test that machinery because he's done more than 2 Grand Prix. He wouldn't get FP1 sessions. His time would be mainly spent in the simulator and going around the World Endurance Championship. It wouldn't be the most efficient way for him to prove his credentials. It wouldn't be relevant. Sure, it would look good on his LinkedIn sheet, Mick Schumacher's, if he was the reserve driver for Cadillac, but you just got to look at the entire widget, and really, in hindsight, you just think, well, yeah, maybe it wasn't as good as we might have thought. So yeah, maybe I can understand Mick's misgivings on that front if that were the case. Sure, he might have learnt many things, and Cadillac would learn many things from him. I'd certainly think it's better than no testing at all. But in contrast to Mercedes, who have everything ready to go in a really strong established TPC environment, which Mick did make the most of for a good 2 years, it wouldn't really be the ideal situation if he was planning to make an epic comeback. Also, there's the political geometry of engines. Cadillac will race with Ferrari power at the start of 2026, before GM's own unit is ready in 2029. That creates a transitional ecosystem with many masters and shifting priorities. For a driver trying to stitch together sim work and development mileage at the top with Jota, which it would be, that ambiguity is a real headache to try and manage. However, this is not a sign that Mick is about to run out of any options. There's always McLaren, as per the race's own piece I referred to at the top of the video. McLaren are entering World Endurance for 2027 in the LMDH category, after a development year in 2026, to fully get to grips, pun intended, with the brand new tyres that Michelin are going to be introducing in next year that are promising to not reduce performance, but are a lot more sustainable and a lot more, well, enduring. Aligning with McLaren? That's a little bit interesting. I personally think it's a bit of a good bet. And when you look to what he was doing in the last year or so, it's not the most surprising thing yet. The last time we remember in infamy regarding to a Schumacher and a McLaren is when DC borrowed Michael's helmet in 1996 Monaco. Having that, it just looked weird, man, even though Marlboro sponsored both teams. No, in reality, Mick Schumacher did some testing with McLaren, as part of the deal that Mercedes has with all its customer teams, that they can borrow their own reserve and test driver. They don't have to have their own. I mean, they can if they want, but, you know, he's always available. That could be attractive for a driver who still cares about F1 exposure with the best team right now, yet may want leadership status and development role clarity in sports cars. And if you believe McLaren's WEC project will be resourced at the level its F1 team operates, passing on Cadillac to keep the lane open does make a little bit of logical sense. Now, I'm not saying that this is the ticket into getting back into F1 via McLaren of all places. Lando and Oscar, they've got that locked down for a good few years yet, as long as they can keep things civil as they have been last year, going all the way through 2028, when I think Piastri's contract expires. But in reality, thanks to human nature, I don't really see that partnership lasting that long. I mean, there is risk baked in on all this, because if he were to do this and take on the McLaren gig, it means he would be out of active competition throughout 2026, and he would be turning down a potential extension with Alpine, abandoning them, casting them aside. And also a very, very secure seat. All of which this is done before McLaren's even turned a wheel. The only thing they've got right now is their Dallara-made concept model that they've been showing off at recent events over the last couple of months, just to show that, hey, we have a concept, yeah, we're coming back, really, just look at this, you know, still motion model, like with the F1 2022 model that we saw a bajillion times. And yeah, as you can imagine, just working behind the scenes next year would reduce race mileage. In fact, he wouldn't have any race mileage at all. And he would fall out of the public consciousness even more than he already has. But in the eyes of Mick and McLaren, would they really care about that? Well, no, not really. You just announced the potential partnership of, oh, Mick Schumacher partners up with McLaren, and then that's it. They just get on with the business behind the scenes. Kind of in a similar way with Mick Schumacher helping build up the A424 as it was preparing for the 2024 WEC Championship. So you could easily say that Mick has done this before, gearing up a brand new LMDH team ready for the big leagues. That kind of experience I think McLaren would appreciate. Zab Brown would appreciate as well. And also, the grid is going to be crowded for 2027, since McLaren are coming in as well, Ford's coming in as well. You need some big heavy hitters, which means that also the grid, the order, the seating arrangements within the Endurance Championship could be in major flux. But at the same time, if McLaren actually then turns out to have to delay their arrival into 2028, or if it completely fizzled out altogether, although I really doubt it, since McLaren, the F1 team, are apparently valued at $3.5 billion at the moment, they are rapidly increasing in that, they're not short of cash right now. It may mean that Mick might have gambled on something and then lost, and I doubt that Alpine would take him back after he would have spurned them, if this were the case. But it might be a risk that Mick is willing to take, partnering up with McLaren, instead of just choosing the reserve role, which might not have yielded anything in F1 for at least a couple of years at best, and then would have maybe restrained his capabilities and potential within World Endurance, the sporting category that he's actually been able to show a modicum of talent for, the ability still remaining true within his family lineage. taking a role that would require equal pay and equal attention, it may actually really impact the differentiation in his abilities. Like, maybe the efforts of him getting really good solid qualifying positions as well as being a dab hand of the race wouldn't be regarded nearly as much as maybe some other drivers who don't put in as much effort at all. Again, Gunnar and Maka being in the hyperpole shootout, and that means they can just concentrate on the Sunday and make sure that they can remain consistent. That's how the teamwork dynamics would have worked in World Endurance, honestly. Sure, you might think that's arrogant or selfish of Mick to be demanding that sort of thing. Well, he has been able to show the chops that he is fast and he is capable of getting podiums in a midfield World Endurance car. Just imagine what he could have done with a top-tier car. He could have been taking wins with his teammates, and if McLaren turned out to be pretty good, he might be able to do that too. And let's not forget, Mick did have some power here. He did turn Cadillac down, seemingly, and it now means that Jota and Cadillac have to find somebody else to fill in the hole that Mick might have left them. That was their plan, seemingly, and now that plan has fallen flat. It really does make me think that Mick did put a spanner in their work. So here you go. Here's the spanner. Zak Brown, as you could probably imagine by now, loves making an impact, statements, and the Schumacher name still resonates across Europe. After 2 strong years with Alpine, he's proven to be dependable and quick, and that visibility boosts sponsor activations and media attention for their return to the top tier of World Endurance, giving McLaren's hypercar debut extra shine. For McLaren, Schumacher is just good business, and having that name attributed to McLaren is still something that is really fanciful for long-term Formula One fans. A Schumacher in a Macker? Schumacher? Oh my, oh. Now, okay, I don't know what specific clauses would be on the table here, but I'm pretty sure that Zak Brown has a really good knack in getting down to the really fine details and getting an understanding about what the driver wants, and he might be just saying, hey, you might be really good at qualifying. Well, don't you worry. I'm going to make sure that your potentials are risen to the fore to make sure that you feel valued, which was part of the reason why they were able to take Oscar Piastri away from Alpine. Oh my god, I just realised the parallels with Piastri away Alpine and McLaren. Schumacher, a really necessary Alpine driver, snatched away by McLaren. Oh! It's poetry! After all, I'm quite certain that both Brown and Stella would have heard back from the McLaren test team about Schumacher's work in the F1 car, and yeah, Andrea is attached to the F1 side of things, not with WEC, but he's worked with Michael before at Ferrari and he would appreciate his son's equally devoted work ethic. He put in a good word, I'm sure of it, with the hypercar side. So even though Mick is now most certainly done with a full-time return to F1, I'm glad that he didn't just bite the Andretti offer without really thinking about it, as it's become quite clear that the team did offer him something. Because yes, Cadillac did offer a return to the Formula One fold right now, with certain hierarchical conditions within the endurance side of things. It would have meant he would have been busy next year, but it not might have been the way he might have wanted to be busy. All of that hard work that might have been appreciated by Alpine in spades may not be so much for the sake of, well, equality and all that. And that might not have been ideal for the way Mick wants to go racing and what he's become accustomed to. In a way, Alpine kind of spoiled him, but then again, he's been able to justify that extra attention. That qualifying thing, it's really important. And again, Mick's been part of a big journey of getting Alpine back into endurance racing, and McLaren will just look at that and think, we want some of that too. And if you believe that your stock could raise higher with visible responsibility in being part of the developmental train and then demonstrating your skills when you actually go racing, instead of just getting a get-rich-quick scheme or get back into F1 quick scheme, then you take the delayed gratification route in just waiting a year to get back into World Endurance, and then maybe having some fun times in a McLaren F1 machine around Goodwood, for example, or around some demo runs. And the payback is narrative control. Sure, it means that he's not working with Cadillac, but at the same time, he will be seen building a car and developing it, really showing his hard work, his hard graft, instead of just being in a seat and then maybe doing some World Endurance on the side and then just waiting for either Checo or Bottas to check out or something. Okay, one last glug for you all. And the next sign to watch for is Alpine's response and who Cadillac names instead in the Jota role. Every step now decides if Mick is remembered as a lost F1 talent or a driver who redefined himself through endurance. Something that we saw with Antonio Giovinazzi, our Italian Jesus. And, let's not forget, Robert Kubica. And my plan for you is to watch this video here that you can go and watch right now. I'll see you over there.